Hey guys, this is Keelan and welcome back to the channel. I've got an exciting one for you today. So in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how I created these character illustrations in Blender. Now these are quite trendy and I've actually used them quite recently in a web design project, and I'll also include some links below where you can download my original project files and some high resolution images to use in your own designs. But with that out of the way, it's time to improve your skills, start up Blender and follow along with me. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, so the overall premise and technique we're going to be using in this tutorial is modeling using the subdivision surface modifier. And so as an example, the first thing we're going to do is model the head. So I'm going to keep the starting cube here, and this is going to be the basis of our head. Nice and straightforward. So firstly, let's shrink this down to quite small, because the cube itself is quite large, but I'm happy with this scale. And then come over here to the modifier tab and add a subdivision surface modifier. Increase the viewport by 1, and this is the basis of our head. And now you might be thinking it's a bit round, but of course all we have to do is tab into edit mode and adjust accordingly. So if we want to perhaps make the head a little bit longer, we select this bottom face, GZ to bring this down, and then perhaps press Ctrl R. I'm going to insert another loop cut here just to add a bit more geometry, and then select some faces, scale this down on the bottom here. Perhaps select some edges. We're going to bring this one up until we build out a bit more of a head shape, and then perhaps bring these two in, scaling them along the x-axis there, and lastly a little bit on the side of the head and the top of the head. And then just like that, using the subdivision surface modifier, we've got a bit more of a head shape, and underneath the hood it's just this very basic shape. But because the subdivision surface modifier is doing its thing, it's smoothing it all over, really adding that extra geometry, and just like that, that's a nice basis of a stylized head. Okay, so let's bring this up, and we're going to move on now to doing the neck and the body, and then we'll come back and do the hair and such. So firstly, let's go ahead and create a neck. So I'm going to do this using the skin modifier on some extra vertexes. So let's do Shift A, go to meshes, and we're going to add a single vert. If you don't have the single vert option in your meshes, just come up to Edit, Preferences, and type in extra, and just make sure you enable extra meshes and extra curves here, and you get all the good stuff then. Okay, so once you've got your vertex here, I'm going to add two modifiers, skin and subdivision. This is huge right now, and you'll be familiar with this technique if you watched any of my other videos, because I use this technique all the time. And all we need to do is make sure you're in edit mode on this vertex, go into vertex select mode, and in order to scale this down we need to use Ctrl A, and that's just going to bring it down nicely. I want to increase my viewport by 1, and then let's press EZ to extrude this up. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to go into object mode, bring this up into the head, just like that, and that's looking pretty good to me. Now we've got the head and the neck. Now let's move on to the body. So I'm going to press Shift A, and guess what we're going with? A cube. Scale it down because it is massive, and GZ, bring this down here. Let's go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier. And okay, so we're going to have to build this out very similar as we did with the head. So tab into edit mode. I think initially I'm going to select this bottom face, GZ, and bring it down because I want it to be a little bit longer. But then I'm going to increase my viewport by 1 just to give us a bit more shape, and then press Ctrl R and add a loop cut in down here. And you can keep an eye up here. I've put the reference somewhere on the screen just to give you an idea of what I'm going for. But of course, as like with all my other tutorials, feel free to experiment. You don't need to make the exact same thing that I am. You can always do your own thing, and I do encourage that. Okay, cool. So that's looking good to me. Now I wanted to put a bit of an angle on this guy, like he's almost in an action pose to an extent. So perhaps let's go ahead and Let me just shrink this down here, and perhaps over here too. Just scaling them down on their own axes there. Okay, and then what I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna turn on my, what's it called? I'm gonna turn on my proportional editing tool, and what this is going to do, it's going to give us a nice radius of effect when we're applying certain changes. So I want to create like an interesting curve shape in the body, which might sound weird right now, but if I press 2 to go into edge select mode, hold Alt, which is going to select Alt and click here, which is going to select this entire loop, and then I'm going to press GY, and then you can see how it's affecting everything right now. But if you scroll your mouse wheel up, that's going to reduce the overall area that this proportional editing tool will affect. And I'm just gonna bring it out a little bit like this. Okay, that's looking interesting, and perhaps bring them forward a little bit. Cool, I'm digging it. Looking interesting to me. I think I want to put a little bit of a curve in the neck too, so I'm going to click on the neck, tab into edit mode, press Alt C to go into X-ray mode so we can actually see inside here, then press 2 to select edges. I'm just going to click on this edge, right click, subdivide. This is going to give us an extra vertex to use here. And then let me just come into right side view. I'm going to bring this back, whoops, turn off proportional editing now. Okay, GY to bring this back. And then I'm just going to bring the head up a little, just so we have a bit more of a curve on the neck to look a little bit more natural. And if you want to smooth this over, click on our vertex here and just press Control Shift B. This is going to bevel that vertex and give you an extra bit of geometry there. Okay, cool. I know it's looking quite strange right now, isn't it? But don't worry, it's all going to work out, trust me. So let's move on to the arms. So I'm just going to hold Shift or right click here, and then we're going to do the very similar thing that we did with the neck, and use the skin and the subdivision surface modifier to go ahead and build out some arms. So Shift A, add a single vert, add single vert, skin, and a subdivision surface modifier. Control A, scale this down, and just build out some shapes. So I'm going to go ahead and just give him like as if he's got his arm up or something. So if I come into right side view first, and then E to extrude, and E to extrude. Very blocky right now and funny looking, but trust me, it's all going to work out. So I'm also going to highlight this vertex over here, mark it as the root, and let's tab into edit mode on this thing and into X-ray mode just to adjust the angles to make it look a little bit more natural. Maybe something like that. And I also want to smooth this out a little bit too, so just like we did on the neck, click this vertex, Control Shift B, and then you can also scroll your mouse wheel up if you wanted to add some extra vertexes in there, and this is just really gonna give us a nice curve to our arm here, and I like it. You can also increase your viewport to get more of a defined shape, and then I'm also gonna tab back to edit mode, turn on my proportional editor, highlight this vertex at the end, and just Control A to scale this down. Then use your scrolling mouse wheel up, depending on how much of the arm you want to affect, just to give it a bit more of a gradient where it gets thinner towards the wrist. Okay, I like that. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, and then let's go ahead and add a... Actually, we'll just duplicate it. So Shift D, tab X just to log to the X-axis, and we're just going to bring it over here. Okay, and then all we need to do is tab into edit mode, turn off proportional editing, and adjust this side of the arm so that it's, you know, that looks okay. I think I'm going to delete up to here in terms of vertexes, so just highlight these X vertexes and then just extrude something else out. So perhaps bring this down here, and then E to extrude this down here. Okay, something starting to look quite interesting. and then perhaps tab into edit mode, Control Shift B, bevel this out, proportional editing turn on, and then Control A, and then Control A, scale this down proportionately, and perhaps bring it up a little bit. And now we have two arms. That's looking kind of cool. I think I need to bring it in slightly here because it is looking, he's looking a bit like a tortoise, isn't he? So tab into edit mode here, and I think it's this one up here is a little bit too far out. Lock that to the y-axis, and it's more down here that I wanted. Okay, cool. That's looking interesting. Okay, so let's go ahead now and finish up the legs, and then we'll have the basis of a very basic shaped out mesh. So Shift A, and then we'll do Control Shift A here, add a single vert, same again, skin and subdivision surface modifier. Control A, scale it down, turn off proportional editing right now, and we're just gonna extrude out some legs. I'm gonna come back into right view mode here, just so I can get a good angle, and then whoops, make sure you have vertex selected, and then E to extrude and E to extrude. Just gonna adjust, bring this up inside the mesh, and I'm aiming just to get some sort of maybe semi-action pose. So if you stand in there, and let's go ahead and go into front view, duplicate, lock to the x-axis, and then adjust into front view. Okay, that's looking kind of cool. Perhaps bring this in slightly here and over here. We also might want to bring this up. I'm going to double tap G to move this along its edge, and then using the proportional editor tool, just like we did last time, tab to edit mode and then Control A, and scroll the mouse wheel up just to give this a bit of a size gradient, and same over here, Control A, just like that. Okay, that's looking cool. And then I'm going to increase my viewport by 1 on both of these to keep it consistent across the board, and we can see the general shape of our character coming along here. Okay, that's looking good to me. So let's go ahead and give him some hands and feet also. So tab into edit mode on this foot here. I'm going to come into right view, and let's go ahead and just press E once and then E twice to extrude out. We're not going to put a lot of detail in the feet right here. I'm literally just going to do a bit like a little foot shape. Same over here, tab into edit mode on this one, and then foot down here and foot out here. And you can use Control A if you wanted to shape these up a little bit. Just turn off my proportional editing tool, but I'm going to keep them a little bit chunky and like that, because I just think the feet look a little bit quirky. And in terms of hands, just like we've done before, I'm going to use Shift right click to move it to the hand there, to the wrist, and use Shift A and add a cube. And then just like we've done with everything else, I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier, come into my right view, tab into edit mode, and let's press Alt Z to go into X-ray, then move this out to elongate the hand, perhaps move it up, Control R, put a loop cut in the middle here somewhere, highlight these, scale them down, and then perhaps scale the entire thing up a little bit, and perhaps select all these middle ones, GZ, bring those down, and bring this up just to get some sort of hand into top view mode. RZ, just to line this up accurately, and that's one sort of stylized hand. And what we can do is, if you come up to here to our snap to tool, go on the drop down, change this to face, and then click on our hand, Shift D to duplicate, and then hold Control, and then you can see when you hold Control it snaps to the face that you're hovering over. So just snap it to the wrist just to get the basis, and then let's go ahead, and I think I'm going to rotate this one on the y-axis by 180, GZ to bring it down, and then you can double tap R just to sort of get a nicer shape. And if you wanted to thicken this out to S to scale, you can press X twice to scale this up on its local x-axis, and perhaps do the same up here, S, X, X, widen these up, increase the viewport on both, and now we've got the general hand shapes too. Remember, this is stylized and basic, so we're not going to do individual fingers and such, purely for illustration purposes, so everything's really straightforward and simple. Okay, and now let's quickly adjust the head angle, bring it inside a little bit, and perhaps bring the neck forward slightly, and rotate the head, so R and X, just to tilt it up slightly, and then move it across the y-axis there, just to get a bit more of a natural shape. Okay, this is coming along really well. So all we need to do now really is to start building out the hair. I'm going to add in some ears also, so let's move on to the hair. Okay, so to start off the hair, I'm going to go into right view mode, click on the head and do Shift S, cursor to selected, and then I'm going to do Shift A and add in a cube, scale it down, and then let's go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier. Bring this up, increase the viewport by 1, and let's start by increasing the scale till it's sort of contained by inside or just outside the head. So you could go with that if you wanted to, and there's an afro, but I'm gonna go for something a bit more stylish, let's say. So all we need to do here is to start adjusting our shapes. So I'm going to add in another loop cut here with Control R initially, right click to center it up, and then in X-ray mode, just make sure you're in X-ray mode so that when you are selecting these vertexes, you're selecting them on both the front and the back. So into right view mode, and then it's just a case of shaping up a hairstyle. I'm going to go for this tall fringe sort of look. So initially, let's just bring this up, bring this into the back of the head, and then add in some extra loop cuts where you want to start shaping it around the head. Control R here, and this is going to be the root of the hair, perhaps here also, and then add in some vertical cuts. And this looks messy initially, but what we'll do afterwards is come in and do a little bit of cleanup, but it's just a case of adding an extra loop cut where you need it, and then shaping out the general style that you're going for. And of course, during this entire process, we will have to adjust it from the front and the back too, because you can see right now we've got this good shape going on, but if we go into front view, whoa, what is going on there, you might be thinking, but it's okay, we're gonna fix that. So initially, let's just go in and add a loop cut down the center here, right click to keep that in the middle, scale it up ever so slightly, and then we can move this down, lock that to the Z axis there, and let's go ahead and bring in the sides. So I'm going to go into front view mode and turn on, if you come up to here, we can turn on the mirror tool. So now if I do anything on the x-axis, it's going to mirror straight across the other side. So if I highlight all these, press G and X, I can bring these in, and then we'll do the same down here, just a smidge, whoops, just a smidge. Okay, and we're going to need to bring it in on the sides a lot more. So what I'm going to do is turn on our proportional editing tool. I'm going to select this here, G and X, press scroll your mouse wheel up to bring this in a lot more. And then do the same here, G and X to bring these in. Okay, and that's looking kind of cool. Alright, now we've got this sort of big hair, big fringe thing going on, and all we need to add here really is some ears. So I'm going to do the easy way here. So I'm going to click on the head, Shift D, X to lock to the X axis, then scale this down, then scale it along the X axis just to thin this out, scale it on the Y axis too, and then place this on the side of the head here. Remember, we can use Control to snap it to the faces because we've turned that on in our Snap To tool. Okay, there's an ear, and then come into our ear here, add modifier, go to mirror, and then click the selector tool and click on our head, and we've also got 2 ears. Okay, you may or may not want to scale down your hair and play around with the shape a little bit more. It's just going to take a little bit of time for you to adjust to get something you're happy with. For the purposes of this tutorial, I think this will do, and that's looking pretty good to me. Okay, cool. Let's move on now to do a bit of cleanup. We'll do some coloring and then we'll render this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and touch all of these things up. So initially I'm just going to go through all my pieces and apply all my modifiers. I've tried to keep them all around a viewport of 2 right now, and that's because when it comes to actually joining all these pieces together, I'm going to add an additional subdivision surface modifier over all of these, so they'll all be subdivided with equal values. So let's go ahead now and highlight all of these, and what we're going to do is use Control J, which is going to make them all one object here. Okay, and from there let's go into our modifier, add modifier, and add a subdivision surface modifier. You can increase the viewport by 1 if you want, and it's really starting to get smooth now. This will be dependent on your machine, how well it can handle all these different polygons, but you can go ahead and decrease that, and then what we're going to do anyway is right click and shade smooth, and now we've got this nice smooth looking character. Love it, it's looking pretty good to me. So let's go over now into our material preview, and I'm going to click this drop down and change the HDRI preview to this one just because it's a little bit brighter, which tends to be more accurate. Then I'm going to GZ to bring this up, and we're also going to go ahead and click on our character here, object, set origin to center of mass. This just makes this little yellow dot here, which is the center of mass of the object, right in the center. So if we start to rotate, it's perfectly aligned to the center of mass there. So what colors are we going to make this thing? Well, initially I'm going to give him a base, which is the skin color. So come down to our materials properties, and I'm just going to call this skin. And for me, I'm going to make him a slightly pinky color, but of course you can have purple, green, yellow, you know, any color you like. And then of course we need to tap into these individual objects underneath. So let's go ahead and tab into edit mode, and then you might be thinking, okay, it's all one object now, so how do I select the individual arms and the legs? How do I do this? Well, all you need to do, so we're going to color in the shirt here, so the sleeves, let's say, and the body. Just hover over the shape, press L, and it's going to select this individual object. And then same for the chest, and same for the other arm. Then come over to here and add a new color. I'm just going to call this shirt, and then click assign, and that's going to assign the color right here to whichever meshes you had selected at the time. Then you can come out of edit mode and you can just adjust the colors accordingly. I'm going to make this like an orangey color like it was in the design, like that. And when it comes to getting a nice soft look, you want to make sure you turn your roughness up a little bit, because this will reduce the shine. I like around 0.75 or 0.8. I think it's a nice balance of the both. And I'm going to do the same with the skin to around, say, 0.8. Okay, and now let's finish up coloring the rest of the character. So back into edit mode, hover over the legs, L and L, plus, and I'm going to call these legs. And I'm going to assign those and give them a darkish purpley blue color. And also increase the roughness to around 0.75. And lastly, we just need to adjust the hair. L on the hair, plus new hair, and assign that to the head. So I'm gonna give him a hair color of perhaps a, yeah, perhaps like a orangey red color here. I think that's quite nice. Increase the roughness to 0.7 or perhaps 0.65 because I like a tiny bit of shine on the hair here. And we're almost done really. Now it's just time to jump into the render options, because this is where the magic really happens. Because if we jump into our camera view right now, just click here, toggle camera, let's adjust this. So find an angle you like. I think I'm gonna do something around here, and then when you've got an angle you like, come into view, and we're gonna go align and align active camera to view. Then all we need to do is to do the final adjustment. So N, view, lock camera to view, zoom this out until you've got the perfect angle that you like. I'm happy with that. And then come back in, turn this off, press N to close that menu, and there we are. Now we're good to go and render this out. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is come up to here into our rendered view, and it's a bit dark right now, so we're going to adjust the scene. But some of the first settings I like to adjust inside our render properties here. I like to come down to color management and change the look option to high contrast. This just makes all the colors a lot more vibrant and colorful, and just, you know, really makes them pop very nicely. And then now it's just a case of adding in some lights. So we've got the base light here. What I want to do is G to move this down to the front of the character, around about here, just off to the side slightly. And I always use a basic 3-point lighting setup. So you've got your initial light, and then I want to shift D to duplicate. We have one light off to the side here, because whenever you have your primary light here, which tends to be one of the brightest, the point of this light is to light up the main part of your character here. But of course, in doing so, you're going to create a lot of shadow on the other side. So this light is just here to complement and brighten those shadows a little bit. So I'm just going to reduce this down to around 400 maybe, because it's only there to brighten those shadows, not get rid of them. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this light again to bring one behind. And the point of this backlight is to add a nice bright color and sort of almost like a light silhouette to our guy here, to our little character, which you can really increase the brightness here. I'm just going to go for like 1200, and you can also change the color too, just to get some different tones depending on what you're going for. But I'm going to lean into the pinks and the blues slightly here, and the purples, and you can see this adds a nice sort of tone along this here. Okay, now if we jump back into our camera, these shadows are quite harsh, so what I'm going to do is click on our main light, and if we increase the radius, this softens those shadows really well, maybe around 0.85. Now we're getting a lot of shadow flicker here, but don't worry about that right now, because this is only occurring in Eevees, because it's time to show you the magic. So if we go over here into our render properties, and into render engine, and drop into cycles, you can see we get this beautiful shadow, these lovely colors, and it's looking really nice. And you can change your device to GPU if you have one. That's just going to render it out really well. And also come down to film, and I think I'm going to change this to transparent. You can add a background if you want. I'm just going to leave this as transparent for now, which will give you the opportunity just to drag this into any way you like. And that pretty much does it for today's tutorial. All that's left to do here is to come up to render and render out our image. And I'll quickly fast forward to the render for you. And we're almost there. So one last thing, you see how we get this grain when we're rendering? Well, we can fix that. We come into our layer properties here and turn on this option here, denoising data, come into compositing, use nodes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use something called a denoiser. If we press Shift A, search for denoise, click on that and just throw it in between these. Then drag in your denoising normals into the normals, your denoising albedo into the albedo. Now if we just use F12 to render this one more time, I'm going to skip into the final render, and there you have it, our beautiful character illustration. Whew, that was a long one today. I hope you enjoyed, and if you made it right to the end, go ahead and leave a comment below and let me know. But my name has been Keelan. If you liked the video, like the video. Subscribes are always appreciated, but until next time, have a nice day and I'll catch you in the next one.